Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I am the ConflictNerd. Welcome back to Star Wars Battlefront. Today, I would like to bring you a bit of a critique on the Star Wars Battlefront beta because there are some issues. Now, let me just preface all of this by saying that I am a huge Star Wars nerd. I am a huge Battlefront fan. The Battlefront games are some of my favorites. I don't really talk about them because they're sort of I have a lot of fond memories there. Bespin Platforms was the place to be, but I don't talk about it because it's kind of just my thing, you know? I like to keep that game to myself. I don't want to talk about it on the channel, etc., etc. But I want to talk about this one because as much nostalgia as I'm feeling, as beautiful as this game is, as it's an amazing audio experience as well, because it just sounds like Star Wars. The music's there, the sound effects there, everything's there except for the voice acting, which is to be desired, but that's beside the point. Everything's there to dress this up as a beautiful, immersive Star Wars game. But what's not there is an element that would actually make it a brilliant game as well. Balancing is somewhat non-existent, and I'm slightly concerned that DICE hadn't addressed this sooner. It was addressed after people complained. They went out on Twitter and said, okay, we're gonna fix this. But I'm concerned that this wasn't brought up with any internal testing, or perhaps it was and they wanted to get a second opinion in the form of the public outcry. But whatever the case, I'm very concerned that this wasn't fixed before we even got to this beta. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm of course talking about the fact that Walker Assault is heavily biased in favor of the Empire. For those that don't know what Walker Assault is, it's a mode where two all-terrain armored transport AT-AT walkers are attempting to get through the map to blow up the Rebel shield generator. And effectively, the Empire has to escort these and defend them, and the Rebels have to damage them. Now, you can't just shoot them, you need to activate uplink stations. Activating these uplink stations will lock in Y-wing bombers. When the AT-AT advances to a point, depending on how many uplink stations you've locked in, will depend on how many Y-wing bombers hit the AT-AT, and then will depend on how long the shields of the AT-AT are down for you to damage it. Locking in the uplink stations does not cause the damage itself. It might cause a little bit, but nowhere near enough. When you lock those in, what you then need to do is deal as much damage, once the Y-wings hit it, deal as much damage in that window of time, that window of opportunity, as you possibly can. Best way to do it is with an orbital strike, but that's a random pickup, so you're not guaranteed to have one. Next best way to do it is have some people who are competent in X-Wings shoot at it, whilst also dealing with TIE fighters at the same time. Basically, the Rebels have a lot to do. The Rebels have to come out from their spawn point to these uplink stations. They have to capture them, defend them, and hold them. That might sound easy. The Rebels have some turrets, the Rebels have trenches, but here's the thing. Where the Rebels have turrets and trenches, the Empire has two giant AT-AT walkers, two AT-ST walkers, all-terrain scout transport, I think. They have two AT-ST walkers, and they have TIE fighters. The Rebels have no ground vehicles. They have 3 X-Wings and a bunch of turrets. The turrets aren't very good against AT-STs, and the turrets aren't very good against TIE fighters, and they're not very good against the AT-ATs anyway, and you can't damage the AT-ATs until you have that window of opportunity, which you get 3 of in the entire game. And if you get the 3rd one and you haven't taken them down, you've lost. And believe me, I think I've seen the Rebels win 4 times. I was playing the Battlefront beta every day since I got into it the day before it went out to the public, and I saw the Rebels win 4 times. I think it was 5 days, 4 wins for the Rebels. Every other one was a defeat. Every other thing for the Empire was a victory. That isn't balance. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what the best method would be to fix that, because it sort of makes sense that the AT-ATs need to be there. It's Walker Assault. The AT-STs are pretty good. They're quite useful, but somewhat overpowered. I had a game where I had 62 kills and 4 deaths because I sat in an AT-ST. It's ridiculous. On top of that, you have the TIE fighters, which are actually necessary. There's a valid strategy that the TIE fighters can actually blow up the Y-wing bombers before they even touch the AT-ATs. I've done that a few times when the Rebels have been close to victory, and I've caused the Empire to win. It's very easy to blow up the Y-Wing bombers, and not that many people know that you can do it, but it totally works, and it is a valid strategy. But even then, I don't really need to do it. If my Empire team is remotely trying, even just barely trying, they're gonna win. Whereas the Rebels need to be switched on 110% of the time, because if they have one lapse in judgment, one lapse in gameplay, whatever, if they go AFK for a second, they are letting the team down. Because you need everyone to be on point as a Rebel. You need everyone to be working perfectly together as a Rebel. You need them to not be missing their shots. You need them to be getting the orbital strikes. You need the people in the X-Wings to be taking out the AT-STs as soon as they spawn, taking out the TIE Fighters as soon as they spawn. And basically, all of the work being done is by the Rebels. Now here's what doesn't really make sense to me. Why are these uplink stations offline to begin with? And more to the point, why do the Y-Wings even need to lock in? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why do the Y-Wings need to lock in? These AT-AT walkers are going at the shield generator outside the Rebel base. There are trenches, there are shield generators, there are turrets, there is the base, there is a hangar. Why don't the Y-Wings know where that is? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I feel like the way that should be twisted is that the Y-Wings, no matter what, will hit the AT-AT, regardless of capturing it, the uplinks or not. There will be a 10 to 15 second window where the Y-Wings have taken down the shields of the AT-AT walkers. Maybe 10 to 15 seconds is a bit generous. That window should always be there. 3 times in the game, that window should always be there. Capturing the uplinks, which for some reason someone switched off, maybe someone tripped on the power cable and pulled it out, but capturing those should give you extra time. Because at the end of the day, they shouldn't be turned off. It's the Rebel base, and for some reason the Rebels have turned off the thing that lets their bombers counterattack. That seems really silly and really dumb. But alas, you know, I don't know. I don't know who at DICE thought this mode was a good idea. It is fun, don't get me wrong, it is going to be the bread and butter of the game. It's incredibly fun. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm definitely excited to play on Endor. I'm excited to see the other modes as well, but it really concerns me that DICE didn't see this before this beta went out. They responded to criticism, they've said they're going to fix it, but I mean, will they? What are they going to do? What can you realistically do? You can't take the AT-ATs away. If you take the AT-STs away, people are going to complain about it. If you take the TIE Fighters away, then there's no way to counter the Rebel Air Force. And the Rebel Air Force are what's going to do a hell of a lot of damage to your AT-ATs. And on top of that, the TIE Fighters can counter-attack the Y-Wings and stop the damage from being done. So you can't really take anything out. Maybe taking one of the AT-STs away would be a good idea, but even then, you're going to have even more people scrambling for the AT-ST and waiting for the AT-ST to spawn, as opposed to working. Basically, this mode is completely messed up, and I don't have any solid idea for a fix. I don't, and it hurts because I want this game to be good, I really do. I want Star Wars Battlefront to be incredible. I don't think it's going to topple Halo, I don't think it's going to topple Call of Duty, but I want it to be its own thing. I want good Star Wars games. The Old Republic was good, but not that good. I want to play Battlefront all the friggin' time, but I had to turn the game off. I got to a point in Walker Assault where I realized that if I play any more of this, I will not buy the game. This balancing issue is so great and so vast and so frustrating that I would not buy the game if I played any more of it. And what's so frustrating about it is the fact that there is a good game under there. There really is, but this is something that's so vital, so important, it needs fixed so much. Because it's not satisfying to win as the Empire, because it's a given. It's like 95% certain, probably more, that you're gonna win. It's not a satisfying victory. As the Rebels, it's an incredibly satisfying victory if you get it. I've been yelling at the top of my lungs when I win as Rebels. I've thrown some games for the Rebels. I've made some games, rather, for the Rebels where I've been in a snow speeder, and at the last minute I've managed to pull, you know, in the last few seconds I pulled on both of the walkers with a snow speeder and we get victory. I've done that once. And that's an amazing feeling. Winning as the Rebels is brilliant. But that feeling isn't there with the Empire. And more so than not, you're sat there going, ugh, when can I be Empire? This is boring, we have no chance of winning. And especially at the end game anyway, because at the end game, there's no cover for the rebels. There's trenches, but I think someone at DICE might have forgotten that whilst trenches are effective and whilst trenches were in the movie, the AT-80 and AT-ST walkers are up really high, so can shoot into the trenches no problem. And there's TIE interceptors in the sky that are fighters. They're flying around, they can shoot in there no problem. No cover for the rebels. At all. And they have snow speeders at the end as well. No A-wings, no X-wings, snow speeders. Those things have no missiles, they're slow, their weapons do no damage, they can't take down a TIE interceptor. That's not gonna happen. It's horribly balanced for the rebels, and it really hurts. Now we've got that out of the way. Let's actually talk about the game a little bit more vaguely. Let's not talk specifically about Walker Assault. I'm not really going to mention Drop Zone. Drop Zone is a hard point from Call of Duty. I like it. It's fun. I'm pretty good at it. I'll play some of it. But whatever. It's a decent mode. Sullust was a horrible map. It was brown and boring and just dull. Anyway, the game in general is absolutely beautiful. The guns sound great. The guns aren't the best. We'll get to that in a minute. The guns sound great, look great, feel great, but, well, maybe not feel great either. We'll get to that in a minute. The guns sound great and look great. The character models look great. Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker as hero characters are great. The voice acting's terrible, by the way. Some of the things that Darth Vader says are so stupid. And he also, for some reason, says, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful, or something along those lines. He says Ben Kenobi's line. I have no idea why. Did someone at DICE just Google Star Wars quotes and say, oh, we'll get Vader to say that one? Because he doesn't say that, and it makes no sense. At all. At all. It's dumb, and the voice acting's terrible. Seriously, at the moment, you know, is James Earl Jones doing all that much right now? Because I know he's reprised his role as Darth Vader for Star Wars Rebels, the animated series on Disney. So could DICE and EA not get him to do the voice of Vader for the game while he was doing the voice for Rebels? That seems kind of silly. And then Mark Hamill, I mean, the guy's currently shooting Star Wars Episode 8. He was a couple of weeks ago over on the west coast of Ireland. So, I mean, he's currently active in Star Wars as well. So why couldn't they get him to do a voice? Honestly, the voices are not a huge deal, but it's just very silly that they were so authentic with the sound effects and the models and the locations and just the feel of everything. And then you have some guy going, "The Force is my ally," for Darth Vader. And then just someone imitating Mark Hamill going, "May the Force be with us," for Luke Skywalker. It's kind of silly that you have these things. All of these accuracies except the voice actors. Really strange. Anyway, let's actually talk about the weapons. Oh boy, the weapons. Right, so I believe it's the A280C or something like that, the Rebel rifle, is an interesting starting weapon. It might take a little bit to get used to, and I know at first I was trying to figure out how do I reload. You don't reload. Weapons have a heat up and cool down mechanic because they're obviously lasers, except for the sniper rifle, which is a card. I'm not going to talk about the card system. Don't know enough about it. Not that interested in it, to be honest. I'll probably barely use it. But the weapons all have cooldowns, except for the sniper, and that'll take a little bit to get used to. But when you do, the Rebel rifle's actually pretty good. It's a nice medium-range weapon. It's quite quick with a lower damage output, but it is fairly effective. You have the E11 Imperial Blaster, which is kind of the same there. It has a slower rate of fire, so it's much more controlled at range. It can do a longer range than the Rebel rifle. It has that slower rate of fire, but a higher damage output to compensate for it. So again, those two sort of trade each other off, although the E11 is definitely better at range. Then you have I think it's the DLT-19. I might be wrong in that. It's the LMG. It's the thing that looks like an MG42. Well, it is an MG42, basically. It's ridiculous. That needs to be fixed. That thing can shoot at some ridiculous range. It's silly. It's an LMG. And it's so accurate across the map that it's kind of unbelievable. I know it's laser. It's a laser weapon, so there's no drop-off, but you shouldn't be able to easily kill someone from the other side of the map with an LMG. That should not be happening. Yet it does. And what's worse is you have people using the sniper They're tagging their opponent and bringing their opponent down from 100 to 10 health, and then they finish them off with an LMG. It's so ridiculously accurate from range. It shouldn't be. It's silly. And the pistol, I don't know what it's called, the DL-17 or something. The pistol's kind of the same. It's the same. It's a weapon that shouldn't be accurate at long range, yet somehow is, and it's automatic. I mean, I will hold my hands up and say the pistol isn't as accurate at range as anything else, but the range on it's still a bit much, and you can still kill someone across the map with it. I've done it, and I've been killed numerous times by the pistol across the map. Same with the LMG, but good lord, they're a bit silly. They need fixed. The weapons, they do feel great, they sound great, but they are not quite all that well balanced, I'm going to be honest. I'm not happy with the fact that you can use an LMG and a pistol across the map. You shouldn't be able to. You just shouldn't be able to do that. It makes no sense at all. It's dumb. Talking briefly about the cards, I suppose. We'll get into that very briefly. It's going to be interesting to see what other cards are in the game, because in the beta, the only cards I used were the jump pack and the thermal detonators, and that was it. So we'll see what other cards are in the game and what other uses they might have, because really I can't see anything taking the place of my jump pack, and unless there's a bigger version of a thermal detonator, I don't know that I'll need anything else. Maybe if there's a cloaking thing, that could be useful, but I could see that being very annoying. Unless it acts like the personal shield and you can't shoot while cloaked, but I don't know. I'm not too sure about the cards. We'll see how they go. One thing I would like to talk about, though, are the pickups. The pickups that you can find in the map, such as the rocket launcher, the turrets you can use, the automated turrets, and of course vehicles are also pickups, and hero characters are also pickups. They're a little bit silly. They work in drop zone because they come out of the crashed escape pod that you're capturing, so if you capture it, you get some pickups and you get buffed, which is kind of cool. But when it comes to Walker Assault, again, back to Walker Assault, it's a little bit silly because an orbital strike is so vital to the rebels. One orbital strike could potentially be devastating to one of the AT-AT walkers, yet it's a random pickup. Things like automated turrets, deployable turrets, rocket launchers, I mean, things like rocket launchers should be in your loadout, especially for the rebels there because they're dealing with AT-STs. Things like orbital strikes, they don't really make sense considering there shouldn't really be any rebel ships orbiting Hoth, but we'll allow it. Things like orbital strikes, again, they're vital. They're just necessary for the mode, so it is a bit silly that some of the pickups are, well, that all of the pickups are basically random. If you can't see that it's a vehicle, and you can't see, if it's not a vehicle and it's not a hero character, it's going to be an automated turret, it's going to be a deployable turret, it could be an orbital strike, it could be a thermal imploder, it could be whatever. It could be all of these things, but it's probably not going to be the thing that you desperately need. And on top of that, someone's probably going to get an orbital strike and try and use it on one or two Imperial troopers, as opposed to saving it for the AT-AT when you're really going to need it in about 2 minutes. So I don't know. Let's wrap this up. We're rambling a little bit. Star Wars Battlefront. Am I going to buy it? Absolutely. I'm going to buy it on PC. I'm not going to get it on Xbox One because it doesn't look as good, and it doesn't play as good on Xbox One anyway. I'm going to get it on PC. Absolutely. In fact, no, I'm going to get it on both because I realize it comes to Xbox One like 5 days early, so I'm going to get it on Xbox One, then I'll get it on PC afterwards. Because PC's easier to record, but Xbox One lets me play it 5 days in advance because, you know, I'm a shill like that. Anyway, let's conclude. I'm going to buy it. I'm absolutely going to buy it, but that is nostalgia talking. I'm incredibly biased when it comes to Star Wars games. I want to play all of them. I want to enjoy all of them. I want to believe that they're not going to be terrible. But if you played the beta, and you're not wearing nostalgia goggles right now, you may want to hold off. Even if it's just to buy it, you know, buy it at the end of day 1, or on day 2. You know, when you know that the servers are working, when you know that the balance issues have been fixed, you know, you'll know that within a couple of hours of the game being out. If people are all over the internet saying nothing has changed, don't buy it. But again, I'm not following my own advice. It's very difficult to tell people not, you know, to potentially not buy a game when you're going to go out and buy it yourself because you're wearing this. I know I'm wearing these nostalgia goggles. I do. But I really want to believe in this. I want it to be a good game. I know I'll enjoy it. I'll have my fun with it. But if you're someone who maybe isn't as into Star Wars, if you like it but you're not huge on it, it may be worth waiting. It may be. Hopefully we'll see more gameplay, we'll see some of the other modes, we'll hear from DICE that they have in fact fixed everything before the game comes out. I'm sure they'll tell us that regardless of whether they have or haven't fixed it anyway. But hopefully you won't have to hold off too long. Again, if you're like me, you'll buy it anyway, and I mean, who am I anyway? I'm just some random guy on the internet, but I'm excited about it. I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. I really did. I had so much fun with the beta, but there are some huge, glaring issues that desperately need fixed before I will recommend this game without any shred of doubt. Right now, I think more hardcore Star Wars fans will love it, but I do feel it is a slightly more casual game. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It is a slightly more casual game that, unfortunately, may not actually appeal to that casual market, because whilst it's casual in so many ways, there are elements, such as Walker Assault, where you totally need to rely on your team playing at 110%. So with that in mind, folks, Star Wars Battlefront could be a brilliant game, could be a complete mess. We're going to have to wait and see. I've been the Conflict Nerd, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!